intention to change when already a building is on site becomes very difficult, like the engineer has said. And actually, my expectation is I would love to see a statement maybe from the architects of that project on whether it is possible then to make those changes that, the president has declared. It's one thing to say, it is a very different thing now to actually actualize it, because you have the technical people who are there to actualize. And because if you allow me just to ride on this, when we made our statement last week as built environment professionals, we made reference to a report that suggested that a lot of buildings in Kenya today are unsafe. And in fact, that report is traced back to a survey that was done in 2019 by the National Building Inspectorate, right? And largely because, in fact, if you trace now the event of the planning departments in lots of the counties, that there was a change of law that happened. And what used to be a centralized method of approvals and compliance and enforcement was changed up under the new law. And the architect is barely mentioned in the new law. Yeah. And we feel largely that that breakdown of the centralization of how approvals are done and how enforcement then is done has become a loophole which a lot of developers are actually exploiting. And the truth also be told that a lot of our developers have become bullies. They've become bullies. They go behind the backs of the architects, who are the agents, to get approvals done in a certain way in City Hall. And this is becoming now a big problem, as you're hearing now the Cabinet Secretary calling out City Hall, but she's not actually calling out also the developer, who largely is the one who goes to either pay bribes, because there's the issue, of course, of bribing that goes on, because then how do these approvals just get done? The developer is the investor. Yeah. And the same way you're seeing the president, also the president is a client in this sense, because he can go and say, we don't want 3 floors, make them 5 floors. He's taken the position of a developer. And this is where now we say, you're making a mistake as a developer. You have to leave the consultant who has been, trained to do this, to advise you, to do their job. The architect, as I repeat, has been trained highly to be legal, to watch out for public safety. Let them do their work. And it is us who coordinate how also the laws are applied, how the building code is applied, how planning is applied, It is architect, actually, who's largely the custodian of that from the beginning. And that is why also you hear the Cabinet Secretary rightfully mentioning the architect. In fact, she singles out the architect and says, I would register the architect, because legally it is the architect who is the custodian of that public space. And largely when buildings fail, it is because of that poor coordination of design and professional oversight that has been ignored. And I'm really waiting to see that report when it comes out, because you're going to see how this issue here will play out. And many times, like you have seen in Karen, we have developers, because I don't know who decided that architects are expensive. I don't understand. I don't understand where that notion comes from.
Are they?
Kenyans need to understand, no, we are not. Actually, in the scheme of things, we form a very small percentage, and I think the CPM here and the QS will tell you what is the percentage in the scheme of a construction, what is the cost of professionals. They will tell you, and I'll tell you. You yourself, Sam, when you're sick and you go to hospital, will you go and negotiate with the lab technician and the radiologist to do your surgery? Or you let the doctor do their work? Yeah. I hope Kenyans can realize, and it is sad that we have to, sort of discuss these issues at a time when Kenyans have lost their lives. It's unfortunate we have to discuss this. But the involvement of a registered architect is a matter of life and death, and Kenyans need to realize that. We are not just draftsmen. We are not just fundis. We are actually very legally prepared, to take this kind of responsibility. And allowing unregistered architects, to act as architects is like allowing unlicensed doctors to run hospitals. So our regulators, that is Borax, they need to up their game as well. They have to up their game and make sure that those out there who are practicing as architects and they are not registered need to be held to account.